Well, welcome back. So we have our three parts imported into Onshape, and one of the ways that we can work toward creating an assembly is we can go into any one of these documents and create an assembly. That's certainly one way that we can take care of it. Another is to create a fully separate document, and let's title this the Jacklift Assembly. And then this just requires us to bring in all three parts individually. So we don't have any part studio, we don't have any individual parts here, but let's go into the assembly one and let's start inserting our parts here. So if we go up to the top left and choose insert, there are no part studios available, but that's because that's the current document. So let's go to other documents, and you can choose my Onshape or created by me, and there are the three parts right up front. So let's bring in the wedge, and it doesn't matter if you choose part one or the thing that says wedge, it's not going to be named either way, sadly. Okay, then let's use the arrow to go back and bring in the screw. And then one more time, let's use the arrow to go back and bring in the base. Okay, and hit the green checkbox. So the base came in as a surface for whatever reason, the other two are parts. Okay, and obviously you can move all three of these things around. So one of the tricks that I found from another YouTuber on Onshape was to start by using a constraint to basically get the base or the bottom stuck to the origin. So to do that, we're going to use a fastened mate. Fastened mates remove all degrees of freedom from between two parts. So that way it can't slide, it can't rotate or spin. It's essentially grounded and stuck. So let's go ahead and use a fasten mate. We're going to rotate this thing around. Choose one of the corners. It doesn't matter which one. And then select the origin, kind of facing up there. That way it's facing up. Go ahead and click the checkbox. And now we have a base that is stuck. All right. But everything else is still movable. All right. The next part is to place this top piece right here, right on top, so that the oval, elliptical holes match up. They're technically called slots. They're not ellipses. This hole needs to be aligned closest to this spot on the base piece. So that's how it needs to be oriented. So let's take a look at trying to line up the bottom corner from the wedge with the corner on the base. So this particular part, this wedge, doesn't need to move. So we're going to use another fastened mate to do that. So if we rotate to the bottom side of this thing and zoom in, you can see that there are lots of different options here. So whatever particular point you choose, just keep in mind which one you've picked, because we need to line that up when we go to the base. So if I choose this corner and come out here to the base, on the top side, it would be aligned with this corner, since it wasn't the one on the very end. So if I select that and zoom out, I can see that, well, I got it placed, but it's not aligned correctly. So here in the dialog box, we have options for reorienting the secondary axis. So it's not going to flip it, but it will rotate it, as you can see by the circle. So once we've hit rotate once, if it went the other way, we could have hit it a couple more times until it lined up correctly, but everything looks good, so let's click the checkbox there. All right, so we have two pieces assembled and put together. The screw going into the slot on the base and then into the hole of the wedge, that's the tricky part to take care of. So there are a couple of different constraints that we're going to put on this screw. One is called a planar constraint, to basically set it in this slot and get that bolt head, this rounded part here, lined up correctly. So a planar, we gotta find it. There it is. A planar mate constrains two parts. the parts can translate across the plane. Okay, so they can still slide in a couple of directions. So it's not the only constraint that we're going to put on this, but it's one of them. So I'm going to use that Planar Mate, rotate this around, and choose this face. And so right now it's selecting the center of that. Okay, so that's important to know. So I've chosen that face and the center. So when I go to this part, all right, I want it to be that face, but I did need to come over to the center. All right. So this is an example of a time where, yep, it mated the planes the way that I wanted, but the screw is flip-flopped. So this time I'll use flip across the primary axis because I want it to be, a mirror image. Okay, and let's hit the check mark. All right. So right now it's set in there, but it can still move up and down, left and right. But it is at least constrained so that this rounded part of the bolt is stuck, and it will stay in that slot once we add one more constraint. Okay. Because one thing that we want is we want this pin or the screw to be able to rotate. It needs to be able to turn, because that's a mechanism that you rotate and then the jack lifts and lifts the car. So this time we will use a cylindrical constraint, cylindrical, or a cylindrical mate. So what this does is it constrains two parts, and the parts can rotate and translate about the axis. So we've already constrained part of it with the planar piece, but now we need the rotational piece. So the cylindrical mate, all right, we're going to align the, the center of this pin or this screw with the center of the hole. And so it shouldn't be that difficult. We're going to see how this goes. So the center of the pin with the center of the hole, that looks reasonable. If you're having trouble seeing something, you can always turn visibilities off. So if you need to eliminate something so that you can see for sure that we're selecting the center of that hole, and you can certainly do that. All right, so I believe that we selected the right items. I clicked the green check box. X that out because I didn't mean to try to do another one. And then you can see that this screw will still rotate. It'll rotate. Okay. So that is the scoop on the assembly. We're going to pause there, and in the next video, we'll take a look at some of the drawing file and some of the specialty features there. See you in the next one.